It was a busy evening at one of the city's most elegant restaurants. The lights glowed softly, glasses sparkled on every table, and guests whispered over fine wine. Everything was perfect until a single moment changed it all. Amelia, a young waitress new to the job, nervously carried a tray of drinks to a table of businessmen. Her hands trembled slightly, she wanted everything to go right. But as she reached the table, one glass slipped. In slow motion, the drink spilled across the white tablecloth, splashing onto a man's expensive suit. The room froze. The man, Mr. Carter, a powerful executive, shot up from his chair, anger flashing in his eyes. "Do you even know what you've done?" he shouted. Amelia stammered, I am so sorry, sir." "It was an accident." "An accident?" he barked. "This suit costs more than your salary." Tears welled in Amelia's eyes. The other guests stared, silent and uncomfortable. But just as the tension reached its peak, another man at the table, Mr. Lewis, stood up calmly. "Carter, that's enough," he said firmly. "She's human. Mistakes happen." He turned to Amelia with a kind smile. "Are you okay?" She nodded, surprised. Mr. Lewis took a napkin and began helping her clean the table. The other guests followed his lead. The anger in the room melted away. Even Mr. Carter, embarrassed by his own reaction, sat down quietly. Later that evening, Amelia went to thank Mr. Lewis. He smiled and said, "Remember this: how people treat you in your worst moments shows who they truly are. Don't let one bad moment define you." That night, Amelia went home with tears in her eyes, but this time, they were tears of gratitude. She had learned something powerful: kindness can turn even the worst mistake into a moment of grace. Was a quiet evening in an expensive restaurant. The air smelled of fine wine and soft music played in the background. Among the waiters moving gracefully between tables was Sarah, a young woman who had just started her job. She carried a tray with 2 glasses, her hands trembling slightly from nervousness. As she approached one of the VIP tables, her fingers slipped. The glasses clinked, water spilled, and one glass rolled onto the floor, shattering. The sound echoed through the room. Instantly, one of the men at the table, a bald man in a dark suit, stood up in anger. "What's wrong with you?" he shouted, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. Sarah froze, her face pale. "I'm sorry, sir, it was an accident," she whispered, eyes welling with tears. "An accident?" he snapped. "Do you even know how to do your job? Look at this mess." Everyone around the table went silent. Sarah's lips trembled, and a tear rolled down her cheek. She clutched the tray tightly, wishing she could disappear. Then, an older gentleman sitting nearby spoke calmly. "Sir, please, there's no need to yell. She's clearly sorry." The angry man turned, embarrassed, but said nothing more. The older man smiled gently at Sarah. "It's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. Go clean up and take a breath." Sarah nodded, wiping her tears. She went back to the kitchen, her heart heavy but touched by the stranger's kindness. Later that night, she found a small note on her serving tray. It said, "The restaurant was filled with laughter, soft music, and the clinking of glasses. Everything looked perfect except for the trembling waitress standing at table 7. Her name was Emma. It was her 3rd day on the job, and she was doing her best to stay calm. She stood with a notepad in her hand, politely asking, 'Sir, would you like the steak medium or well done?' But before she could even finish, the man across the table, a well-dressed businessman, slammed his fist lightly on the table. 'Are you even listening?' he shouted. 'I already told you. You people never pay attention.'" Emma froze. Her eyes widened as she tried to explain. "I'm sorry, sir, I just wanted to confirm," he interrupted harshly. "You can't even take a simple order. Maybe you should find another job." The people around the table went silent. A tear slid down Emma's cheek as she stood there, humiliated. She quickly nodded and turned away, her hands shaking, but before she could walk off, a woman from another table stood up. She said firmly, "Sir, yelling at her won't make you right, it only makes you cruel." The man blinked, realizing everyone in the restaurant was now staring. His face turned red, and he looked down awkwardly. Emma wiped her tears and whispered, "Thank you," to the kind woman. The lady smiled softly and said, "Never let someone's anger make you forget your kindness." That night, when Emma went home, she replayed the moment in her mind, not the shouting, but the words that had lifted her heart. It was a fancy evening at a five-star restaurant. Guests in elegant suits and dresses enjoyed their meals while soft jazz played in the background. Everything looked perfect except for one trembling waitress named Lena. It was her first week on the job. She stood at table 9, holding her notepad, trying to take the order of a serious-looking businessman. His tone was sharp, his patience thin. "I said no sauce on the steak," he shouted suddenly, slamming his hand on the table. Lena flinched, confused. I'm sorry, sir. I thought you said extra sauce." "Are you even listening?" he snapped. "Do you think I have time for your mistakes?" The restaurant went silent. All eyes turned toward them. Lena's hands shook as she gripped her pen tighter, her eyes filling with tears. "I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. The man's anger filled the air, but then, someone from another table spoke calmly. "Sir," said a middle-aged woman, "she's just trying to do her job. You can send the dish back politely, there's no need to humiliate her." The businessman looked around. The other diners were watching disapprovingly. His face reddened as he realized how harsh he'd been. After a moment, his voice softened. "Just bring it again, please," he said quietly. Lena nodded, wiping her tears. Later, when she returned with the corrected order, the man looked up and said, "I'm sorry for yelling earlier. Bad day, but that's no excuse." Lena managed a small smile. "Thank you, sir." That small apology meant more to her than a big tip ever could. The restaurant was elegant that night, chandeliers glowing like stars, soft music floating through the air. Every table was filled, and among the servers rushing politely between guests was Nora, a young waitress trying her best to stay calm. When she placed a dish on table 5, the man sitting there, tall, well-dressed, and clearly wealthy, frowned instantly. "What is this?" he snapped, his voice sharp enough to make the people at nearby tables turn. Nora swallowed nervously. "Sir, that's the steak you ordered." "Medium," I said. "Well done," he roared, slamming his hand on the table so hard that his glass rattled. The sound silenced the entire room. Every head turned. Nora's face turned pale as she trembled, gripping the tray tightly. I'm sorry, sir." "I'll fix it right away," she said, her voice cracking, but he wasn't finished. "Do you even know how to do your job? This is pathetic," he yelled, leaning closer, his anger echoing across the room. Nora's eyes filled with tears. The embarrassment burned inside her chest, she wanted to disappear. Then, a soft voice broke the tension. A woman from another table stood and said firmly, "Sir, that's enough. Yelling at her won't cook your steak any faster." The man froze, realizing everyone was watching, people shaking their heads in disapproval. His pride deflated. He looked at Nora, who stood silently, tears on her cheek. His tone softened. I'm sorry," he muttered. "Please just bring me another plate." Nora nodded quietly and walked away. Her hands still shook, but her heart felt lighter, not because he apologized, but because someone had stood up for her. That night, as she closed the restaurant, she remembered the woman's words. Kindness can speak louder than anger, and sometimes, silence is broken by courage.